welcome to the Capital Discussions Road Trip Trade Alerts Q&A webinar. I'm Tom Nunemaker with Dan Harvey. Before we get started, we do have our disclaimer that Capital Discussions is not a broker-dealer or an investment advisor. This presentation is for educational purposes only. We don't know your situation and have no way of knowing what level of risk is appropriate for you. We're not making any specific trade recommendations. The risk of loss in trading options can be substantial, so please be aware of all of your risks prior to placing any trades. Hypothetical computer-simulated trades are believed to be accurately represented. However, actual profit or loss may vary due to market factors such as liquidity, slippage, and commissions. And it is for educational purposes only. So welcome, everyone. We've got some exciting news that the Road Trip Trade is now published in the Technical Analysis of Stocks and Commodities magazine in the February issue. And I've created a download link for you. Maybe I can put it in the chat for everybody if you want to download that PDF. Hopefully it didn't have any typos. People can let me know if that worked. I think it did. But that's exciting. Hopefully we'll get some more people following us and enjoying the benefits of the road trip. So let's go through our open positions. I've got our SPX and then ES, and then we have a few questions people have sent in, and we can open it up to anybody else's questions. Dan, should I promote everybody, just make it kind of like a trading group? What do you think?
I'm good with that, if it's okay with you. I don't know how interested people are, but if they would like to chime in, feel free.
Yeah, okay. So if you do want to talk, go ahead and join the audio broadcast. If you just want to listen, that's fine. You can just stay with the the way you are now. You don't have to call in. So here we are with the January 20th expiration. Expires in a week, and I think this one's kind of on autopilot. Probability touching at the short strike is at 0%, and really, like you say in the planning notes, if people have this trade on and they need the margin, feel free to close it, because the P&L is right at what you're going to get. The expiration. The only thing you're going to do is save a little bit on commissions if you keep it all the way for another week.
Yeah, I think it's using up about something around 7,000 or something in buying power margin. So
yeah, that's about right.
So if you need it, go ahead and take it off. I'm just leaving mine on in all of my accounts that I trade.
I think I've already taken mine off, but again, that's a trader's choice. Next, we've got the January 31st. This one's it's profitable. It's kind of threatening to rally and take away some of the profits. Do you have plans to raise that right side up, Dan?
Well, we're sort of running out of time. What I'm going to, I have a good till canceled order in to take off the debit spread, because I'm constantly monitoring the value of the debit spread relative to what I paid for it, and also relative to the credit that I received for the credit spread component of the combo. And we had a question about this methodology, which we can discuss later. But basically, the debit spread credit spread combo is basically a bearish leaning condor type of structure. And it makes some really good money if you're under the wing. If you're not under the wing, it will eventually decline, over time. So if we rally back up on Tuesday, I'll have to. Well, it may be cut automatically, because as I say, I think I left it at 22.82 as the trigger price. So if we had a rally, that just would be taken off, and then we just would take whatever profit we have. I don't think there's enough time to do much. What do you think? I mean, can you think of anything to do, really?
Well, 18 days. I mean, you could raise up this side a little bit to lock in some profit in case the market does rally. But, it's...
Well, we'll have profit once the debit spread comes off.
Right. Yep.
But we might have a little more. And I can look at that again. On Friday, I did take off some of the spreads from the original butter to decrease our margins substantially. So we don't really have much in the way of risk on this trade now.
Yep. It's looking good. It's like you said, when you take that debit spread off, it's going to lock in a good profit.
So yeah, and so not all of these are going to be double digits or even approaching 10%. And sometimes you just have to take a smaller profit, and this one may be one of those. Conversely, if we did drop into the wing of the combo here, this would have the potential to be a very sweet trade, and we would get it up there, $700, $800, $900 maybe. So
Yeah.
I'm leaving it in until I'm forced to take it out. That's the basic thing. But when I take out the debit spread, I'm probably just going to leave the credit spread in, and then monitor the whole thing very carefully. And then if we dropped off, I just would close the whole thing out. We'd still have a profit.
Right. And Rick said, let's see, question, get too many involved till we come to market. Rick, I'm not sure exactly what that question is.
I think he means that if we have a lot of people in this strategy.
Oh, I see.
I think since we also trade this in managed accounts, we are contributing a fair amount of the volume, wouldn't you say? And it doesn't seem to be affecting things too much.
Well, I mean, I did a 50 lot in ES on one account a couple days ago, and it was no problem getting filled. A lot of these strikes have thousands and thousands of open interest. So, even if we double the number of people that are following us, it's still going to be a drop in the bucket. The SPX is where the big boys play, and especially if you stick on the 25-point strikes, there's a lot of liquidity there.
And there might be a minor problem from the front running because they'll see the orders. But you got to remember too, Rick, not everybody is going to have our exact same strikes, I think.
Well, and I did something on the ES. I actually had two different butterflies. There were the two top strikes were the same, but the bottom two strikes were 10 points off. So it was almost like a reverse Harvey effect, on the upper long. But it was two different butterflies. So there's ways of splitting it up. Plus, these are going out so far in time. If you don't get filled at 77 days, you get filled at 76 or 75. It's fine. There's a lot of flexibility with this trade, and with this market too. I don't really see it becoming saturated. Somebody called Capital Discussions the Butterfly Club because we have the Road Trip, the Kevlar, the Rhino. A lot of people trading the M3. They're all similar types of trades, but we're not swamping the market by any means. All right, so let's see. We have the 17th of February is next. This one's looking good. This has a lot of potential on the downside.
Yeah, I think this one, if we catch a break on this, this will definitely be nicely profitable.
So do you have any plans if the market keeps rallying, just debit spread-wise, is close and roll?
Well, as we, for all these debit spread, credit spread combos, as I've mentioned in some of the posts, and also Tom, I do this. I keep a detailed spreadsheet that actually, with real time, using RTD links from Thinkorswim, keeps up with the current prices of the debit spread portion and the current prices of the credit spread component, and it gives me the net value of the combo as a whole, and also I have determined in advance where the break-even point is, which we'll discuss later. So I monitor that, and if I have to close it, I simply close it and put on another one, because we're far enough out in time that putting on another complete combo is actually advantageous. Because if you take off the debit spread component of the one that's on near the break-even point, yes, you will have lost a little bit on that debit spread, but you'll make up for it with the credit spread component. And then if you put on a brand new combo trade, which has both elements, you're still at the money again, waiting for the market to pull back into the wing of the debit spread. And so that becomes that's very advantageous right up until a short time prior to expiration, where it's not really worth doing that. And as we'll discuss later on, because we did have some questions about this, there is an advantage to having that debit spread in place, because that means you can actually be a little more aggressive on your reverse Harveys. So I think that there is a tremendous amount of profit potential with this added methodology.
I had a question from Jam Trader. I don't know if can you see the questions, Dan? He's saying
Yes.
about the theta contribution from the original butterfly. Is it worth it to keep it when it is this far away?
Well, yeah, we have addressed that in the past. That's sort of a relative thing. What I like to do is using Thinkorswim. Of course, you could do this with whatever platform. Well, maybe not all platforms, but with most platforms, you could simply, isolate the original butterfly. It's easy to do in Thinkorswim, and just make a determination what the theta component is and what the likelihood of the market actually moving into that butter. And you might be surprised. Newer traders, have a tendency to think, when we have a sustained rally, they have a tendency to think, well, we moved so far up, and I've got a butterfly or something sitting way down below it. It is never going to move into that. No, it actually can happen with some degree of frequency. So you just have to decide, and relative to the amount of margin that it utilizes, and just make a decision whether it's worth it. I usually don't take off the whole thing. You can reposition it if you want to. I'm not a big fan of repositioning because I like to minimize my workload. And also, if you completely reposition, you are introducing new risk now. So those are my thoughts. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, and it does tie up a lot of margin, but the reverse Harveys of those lower longs really frees up quite a bit of capital. And I noticed you did some yesterday, and I also did some on the accounts that we manage. And in a couple cases, it cut the margin from say 80,000 down to 40,000, just by rolling some those lower cheap call or puts. Sorry, but yeah, it's you can roll up. Some people roll up parts of the butterfly, like say the short strike. Maybe, like in this case, you're short 12. Maybe you roll 3 or 4 or 5 up a couple strikes to bring in a little more premium. But like you say, you have to balance that with the extra margin and the extra risk. So it's kind of a trader's choice, if you will. But you're right that the market can move whatever it wants to move. So you're never safe.
No, you're never safe. But remember, the reverse Harvey is actually the single number one method of adjustment for this particular strategy. And with the added debit spread in place, I have even more confidence in maybe being a little more aggressive in the reverse Harvey, which will reduce your margin and will lock in a portion of whatever profit you already have. So that's the way that I view it. And now there will be occasions, certainly, when we have rallied to the point where the original butterfly basically has no value. And that's the reason why Tom and I both, when we see the market having a sustained rally, we will try to layer on some additional trades, either a baby butter or we'll add some put credit spreads, because we know that when we reverse Harvey, the original butterfly, we're going to be raising up that original right side of the expiration curve, and we'll still generate a profit. And we think that is one of the advantages of this particular strategy, as opposed to some other butterfly strategies or condor strategies, that if you have a sustained rally, we can still make money, whereas a lot of people are throwing in the towel.
That's true. In fact, anytime, go ahead. Somebody was going to say something.
Yes, this is Luis Guerra. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. I will try to speak here. What is important for you to say? How many behind the market is ideal for the higher delta longs on the bullet?
Did you get that, Dan? It was breaking up quite a bit.
Not exactly. Can you maybe do it again?
Let me type. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and while he's typing, I think we can start looking at the next one, unless we need to go back, which certainly can. February 28th, this one's still got a lot of time to go, 46 days. It's looking in good shape. Don't really need to do much right now.
No, I don't think we have to do anything at the moment. This one should do well. While I think, and I think you agree with me, Tom, the overall market tone appears to be fairly bullish. Certainly Adam Grimes thinks it is, and it has been performing that way. But as we know, we might be expecting some pullbacks, and we may be able to take advantage of those with some of our butters. But for the time being, I would just leave this alone. When the time comes, which is fairly soon, we'll begin the reverse Harvey process again.
And Chuck just had a question. When would you do a baby butter instead of an in-out? Would it be when the market rallies hard and fast, and then you could reposition the in-out and add the baby in between the original butter and the debit spread?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chuck. Actually, my plan going forward is to do the debit spread, credit spread combo right at trade launch. So I might. So if we had a sustained rally, I would have already, probably cut the original debit spread and then added another one. But having said that, as long as you're careful not to overlap strikes, you can certainly add a baby butter on top of this. It's not going to make any difference at all. The debit spread combo is just going to sit there by itself, and it's going to do what it does. Another possibility is that if you think the market's going to continue to rally, you can put a baby butter slightly out of the money on the upside and let the market then move into the baby butter, assuming you can buy it cheaply. So there are lots of things you can do. I just would caution not to step on the existing strikes, because that's going to confuse everything. But if you haven't done that, then you can certainly superimpose basically whatever you want.
And then Lewis typed his question. He says, what's the ideal spot behind the market that you like the broken wing butterfly to be? I think the short strikes end up generally being around 25 to 29 delta, something like that.
Right. I use the entry tool, which I think you have access to, certainly if
Yep.
you're a subscriber. Yeah, I use the entry tool, and if you look at that step number 1, I try to get that percent of the short strike out of the money. I try to get that at somewhere between 3.2 and 3.6. That seems to work the best for me, and I've been all over the place. I've been closer and farther, and that's where I like to position it. It doesn't have to be exact, and you do want to look at the open interest and the volume on the strikes that you choose. But all things given equal, or I should say all things being equal, I'm going to gravitate towards being closer to 3.2% out of the money. And that's going to get me close enough to get some really good premium, but as a rule, far enough out that I have relative safety.
Yep, that tool, actually, I had a little, Lewis and Ray McCarty, the three of us had a WebEx because they were using the tool for back testing, and it's actually designed for real trading live. So they've given me some suggestions for modifications to the tool so you can actually use it to back test. And I'll be implementing those as soon as I catch my breath, but that's coming. Let's see, Rudy asked, when you're cutting the debit spread and open another one, how do you define the new strikes? Well, it's in and out, so there's going to be one strike above the market and one below normally.
Right, yeah. And so I guess, Rudy, I guess that would beg the question, why do I choose the in-out spread? Well, the reason is, I mean, you can have a more powerful debit spread by going out of the money or by widening it. But the reason I choose the in-out is because that's going to have the lowest time decay, and I'm going to be keeping this delta spread for as long as possible. Unless the market really rallies up, I'm going to be keeping this debit spread in play. Whereas if you have a farther out of the money debit spread, which might have, it's going to have more long vegas, and it's going to be more effective in terms of the possible profit it could generate, but it's also going to begin to deteriorate quickly over time. So I like to use the in-out spread, or at least very close to the in-out spread. It doesn't have to be, perfectly symmetrical, straddling the current SPX price, but I like it to be fairly close.
So, and if it's near the money too, it's also kicking in and helping the position much quicker than if it's out of the money.
Right, exactly, which is a very key point, because that also gives you the confidence, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to do a reverse Harvey with relative safety, and even add, even add an additional put credit spread down there. For those of you who ever traded my Weirdor or the Jeep or the modification of the Weirdor now that Amy has, you may remember that for every debit spread for most vehicles, you can use 5 or 6 credit spreads out of the money. So having that debit spread in place really helps a lot. It really tends to smooth things out. So you want it to be fairly close to the current market. That's the ultimate point.
Right. Okay, so we've got 2 more for SPX. We got the March 17th. That's Spencer, my son's birthday. Again, this is a long way off, still 63 days. The market looks like it's rallied up a bit, but it's still profitable because the vols have come out. So I'm sure you're getting close to the point where you need to cut this debit spread and roll up to a new one, I would guess.
Right, and we're going to discuss very briefly. We've had some questions about the RH guideline rules. Actually, we've had some questions about it, and we've also had some negative comments about the fact that we don't have hard and fast rules on the reverse Harvey, and I want to talk about that a little bit later, and I know Tom does too. But anyway, I like to follow the same thing that Tom does as one of the guidelines, namely the 2 standard deviation line, which you see there in cyan. I like for that to be on the right side, or at least at the same level as the short strike, at about 15 days before expiration. That gives me a lot of confidence to know that it's extremely unlikely that short strike's going to be hit.
Right.
And I think you do the same thing, Tom.
I do. I use these 2 standard deviations at 15 DTE all the time, and works great.
They will change, of course, when you have a volatility pop, but as a guideline, I think it is, well, it is for me. I have about 6 different guidelines that I use for the reverse Harvey, which I'll talk about, and this is one of them.
Well, I like it because it's very fast. It's visual. You know, we're trading a lot of accounts, so I can just pop a position open, look at it, and visually see where this 2 standard deviation is, and get an instant appraisal of how safe is it to reverse Harvey. So you don't have to do any number crunching or anything. It's just right in front of you.
Right. And I see from Chuck, really, Chuck? Because if I did that, that was a mistake, and I don't know where you mean outside the tent, if you mean on the bottom side. Because usually I put the credit spread component of the combo. I either put the short strike of the credit spread. I either put it at the short strike or maybe slightly below. And the rationale for that, okay, the bottom side. Well, yeah, I'll often go below the short strike. And when I say the short strike, I mean the short strike of the butterfly. I will often go below the short strike of the butterfly to place the short strike of the put credit spread. And the rationale for that is that by the time that the market would be approaching the short strike, assuming it didn't happen immediately, I would already be profitable, and I would probably just be out of the trade with a good profit.
Well, I think he's talking about that. In this case, here's the strikes. The put credit spread to pay for the debit spread was actually below the lower long by 25 points. So it was actually below here. It was below the entire butterfly.
Okay. Wow. If I did that.
Unless I had a typo when I was reading the fills, but.
I could, if I did that, it was completely unintentional. Let me look at my Thinkorswim here. That was on the March?
The March 31st SPX.
31st, okay. Yeah, let's see here. March 31st. Yeah, that is correct. I'm short the 2075. Yeah, that actually, I think I made a mistake because I don't usually go out that far. So I didn't get. Let me see what I got in terms of premium. Well, I got $230 of premium. So I may have done that by delta, and which I think I did, I probably chose a delta of somewhere around 14 or 15, and actually that was a mistake. I would have come closer to the money. So thanks for pointing that out. I'm not going to fix it now. In other words, I'm not going to close this and then reposition it. But that's a very good point. So just to summarize, and again, I'm sorry for the error here. When I sell the put credit spread component of the combo, I will put the short strike of the credit spread, either at the short strike of the butterfly or somewhat, below it, but still on the inside of the tent. So for this particular example, I probably should have gone to 2150, 2125.
Yep. So that clears that one up.
But we still got $230 because we're so far out in time. We still got good money.
And did you put it on that day when the Spider or the SPX was down almost 20? That might have been one reason it went lower.
Yeah, I think I did.
Premium.
Yeah, I think I did actually. And so I was looking at the delta, and I said, well, this is fairly rich, so I'll just take this one.
So that could have explained it too.
But that was not not so well conceived. I should have come a little bit closer.
Okay, so let's see. That wraps up the SPX trades. We have a couple of ES futures option positions. January 31st, 19 days to go, something like that. So a few more weeks. This is kind of like the 20 January SPX trade. It's just coasting into expiration. I don't think you're going to touch it at this point.
Right.
Not much premium left. And let's see, February 17th. This one's also in good shape. Really not much to do. Do you have any, with 35 days to go, are you going to do any more reverse Harveys, Inc., or just leave it alone?
I'm gonna try to do one more. Yeah.
Okay.
Because on the ES we're not layering trades and we're not adding the combo, even though we could. And for those that would like to add a combo to your ES trades, feel free. You would do it the same way. And we did have a question on one of the posts about that. But I think for the sake of simplicity, since that was the original premise of the trade, we probably won't make that a routine, but you certainly could.
And Richard asked for the credit spread, is it placed to receive a certain percentage of the cost of the debit spread?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I try to get somewhere between a quarter and a third.
Okay, that's a good guideline. All right, 28 Feb, end of the month. This one's it's up actually from volatility, I think, or maybe bad pricing. But anyway, it's up at the moment, but it definitely looks ripe for a reverse Harvey.
Right. Right. I will be doing this one soon.
And here's that 2 standard deviation at 15 DTE, which is inside the short strike. So there's your visual cue that it's a reverse Harvey. It's RH time. It's from Bill Murray, right?
Right.
that graphic I have.
Exactly. It is RH time, soldier.
Yep. And then we have the March 17th. Again, this is still 63 days out. So the 2 standard deviations is actually inside the tent, getting close to the short strike. So I would imagine a reverse Harvey may be in the cards this week, depending on what the market does.
Right. Yeah, it certainly could be. We're getting there.
And then I think the March 31st ES, you're probably just hoping for a down day to put that on.
I am waiting for that. Yep. We're going to be up at Lake Tahoe next week skiing, but assuming the Wi-Fi works at North Star, which I guess it usually does, I'll still have hour and a half in the morning, maybe 2 hours before I hit the slopes, so I will still be able to monitor everything and to get new trades on, I hope.
That's a great way to spend the trading day, isn't it? Skiing.
Well, yeah, and they have a lot of snow up there this year. They have the most snow in 10 years, actually.
Well, that'll help. I think California's been having droughts in the last recent years, hasn't it?
Right. They're already saying here this may be a drought buster, and yeah, Ralph, we're going to have to keep a weather eye. It's still perfectly blue sky here in Monterey coastline area where I live now, but I am keeping a weather eye. But we lived up there for 15 years, so we know
like
how to
going
drive
home.
snow. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we did have some questions that people have sent in to us. Somebody wanted us to go over the reverse Harvey rules or guidelines, the debit spread, credit spread combo. We've talked about that quite a bit. And then other types of hedges that we use, like in the accounts that we're trading.
Right. Well, Tom, you and I both can comment on this because I know everybody wants to hear your comments as well. But I can just kind of kick it off with the RH. We've had some criticism, which I understand, acceptable criticism. Why don't we have fixed rules for the reverse Harvey? Well, because we can't. And the reason that sounds simplistic, but the reason we can't is because it's a multifactorial process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the 6 guidelines that I use, and then Tom, you can chime in on this. And these are the guidelines, and they all sort of need to be weighed, in tandem with one another. They won't all trigger a reverse Harvey. But these are the things that I think about and that I use for the decision-making process. And number 1 is time passed. That is the number of days in the trade. So, for example, if you think of a road trip trade and you think of time passing, if you make the assumption that the SPX stays exactly where it is and never moves at all, you're going to have to reverse Harvey that thing, or you're going to lose money, because the right side of the expiration curve is going to be below 0. It's going to be only 5% or less below 0 if you follow the entry tool, but it's still going to be below 0. So as time passes, we're actually sort of compelled to begin to raise that curve up. So that's a major factor. Well, how much time? Well, let's say we start one at 75 days out. Well, by 55 to 60 days left, I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to look at the other factors, which I'll talk about in a minute. But at the 55 DTE, I'm going to look and see if it is time to begin the process. Now, I'll do it very slowly, but I may begin the process. And conversely, if we have fewer than, say, 3 weeks left in the trade, there's usually not enough premium. Sometimes there is, depending on volatility levels and whether we have a skew or not. But usually there's not enough premium to mess with that. So that's number 1, the time. The number 2 thing that I look at and that I keep up with on the spreadsheet, I look at the percentage that the SPX currently is relative to what it was at the launch. In other words, the percentage above launch. And when the SPX is greater than 1.5%, percent above what it was at trade launch, then it's a time to begin thinking about slowly beginning the reverse Harvey process. And because if it keeps going up, you're not going to make any money at all. So that's number 2. Number 3, I look at the family of curves, both on OptionView and Thinkorswim, and I'll look at like a 4 or 5 day step. And you will see as the curves start to compress when we've moved up, meaning that there's not a lot of separation between the day step curves, that's a good time to begin to consider the process. And again, it's going to depend on how much time is left in the trade. The worst thing that you would want to do would be if you still have 60 days left and you say, well, I'm going to do a 5-lot, reverse Harvey, 50 points wide. Well, that's a big mistake. You would never want to do that. So you have to use some common sense on these things. So that's number 3 that I use, the compression of the family of curves. Number 4 is what Tom and I just now talked about, looking at the 2 standard deviation line relative to the short strike of the butter. Now, you have to look at your own platform, whether you're using Thinkorswim for your decision-making process, or using OptionView, or using One, or whatever other software platform you might have out there. You have to stay consistent. But for this particular decision-making criterion, I use OptionView. So that's number 4. Number 5, and this is a relatively new addition to the guidelines, and that is that if I have a debit spread, credit spread combo in place, I know that I can be a little more aggressive with the reverse Harveys. And that means that instead of doing a 1 lot, I might do a 2 lot. Instead of doing a 2 lot, I might do a 3 lot. Instead of only going a 10-point width for the reverse Harvey, I might go a 20-point width, that sort of thing. So that's number 5. And then the final thing that I look at, and again, this is going to be relative to whatever platform you're using. You cannot jump around on this. But number 6 is to look at the number of short deltas of your entire position. Now, for the intraday decisions that I make, I use Thinkorswim. I use OptionView at the end of the day because I'm too cheap to pay for real-time data on OptionView. So for the intraday decision-making process, for me, I use Thinkorswim, and for a 6-lot road trip trade, when the total position delta is short, meaning negative, more than say 15 or 16 delta, I'm thinking it's about time for me to do something, and that may be doing a reverse Harvey. So those are my guidelines, and Tom, I'd like for you to weigh in on this, and I know other people would too.
Yeah, you definitely, I like one, you definitely want some time to pass. You don't want to just do those right away. If the market runs up immediately after you put the trade on, there's a good chance it can run right back. So don't be too quick to put them on. And Rudy asked for number 4, statistical volatility. Yes, that's what we're using. Not IV. I tend to use SV for that. Another consideration is how much margin and what kind of account are you trading. If it's a PM or Reg T or IRA, you might make some different decisions, and that might include, if it's a PM account, maybe just RH the upper long and don't touch the lower longs. But,
that's a very good point, and I did not even. I mean, that's exactly what I do, but I didn't really think to put that in my list of guidelines, but that's a very good one because that's going to make a big difference. And just like on the ES trades where we're using span margin, I don't do the reverse Harvey on the lower side. I only do it on the upside. And you can do the same in a PM account, which is what I do in one of my private accounts.
Now, even on a PM account, like at Interactive Brokers, if you carry too much risk, then even though the margin may be still fine, IB has, I forget what they call it, it's excess risk that they'll charge you, and it's usually not a lot. It's like $1 or $2 a day. Depends on how much extra risk there is, but they're looking like a 1987 type of crash. How much can the account really lose? And, if it's 1.5 times what's in the account, then they're going to start charging this excessive risk fee. So even in a PM account, you still might want to RH the lower longs just so you don't get hit with those kinds of fees. Another small point. I don't know if Thinkorswim does that. I haven't heard that they do, but that's another possible reason to RH the lower longs even in a PM account.
Yeah, and that is something. And I have been caught up on. I have been caught by surprise on that a couple times, and then I had to go in and fix it up. There are all sorts of little margining things on a PM account. What you mentioned being one of them, and I think I've talked about before. And as many times as this happened to me, I always still forget it. and I did it again when the December 30 expired. I had the same thing happen again. I had some longs in there and a couple of shorts, I think, but more longs than shorts. And I had made the decision, well, it's so far out of the money, I'm just going to let them all expire. And then the following Monday, I had a Reg T, or not a Reg T, I had a margin call. And the reason was because those extra longs, even though they only had 1 day left before they hit the clearinghouse, they were still actually making a contribution to my available margin. So when they hit the clearinghouse, they're gone, and suddenly I have a margin call. And I think this has happened to me in my 20-something years. This has probably happened 5 or 6 times. You'd think I would remember that, but no.
Bruce asked me to make a quick slide for the rules. I guess, well, not really rules, more guidelines. I guess I could just add a new slide here. So RH guidelines. Let's see. I wonder if I can see time passed. Percent SPX.
Yeah, the percent
above entry price. It's greater than 1.5%. I think is what the number was.
Right. Yep.
Family of curves compressed.
And somebody asked if I can quantify that. I'm sorry, Gary, actually, no. That is a subjective thing. When they all start to come together, that's what I mean by compression, and that's purely subjective. Standard deviation, right?
Aggressive RHs. And number of, let's see, the short delta.
Yeah.
Short position delta.
Yeah, you got them all right. And then the number 7 was margin, PM versus Reg T, that sort of thing.
Okay, so there's your quick RH guidelines.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure. Okay, let's see. So those are those. What else did we want to talk to? We've covered the debit spread combo quite a bit. Is there any other questions or any other points you want to make about it, Dan, or anybody on the call?
Yeah, I think we actually covered that, pretty well. Just to summarize the purpose of it, number one, we're going to try to generate some income, because if we drop into the wing of the debit spread, we're going to make more money than we ever would have from just the road trip trade itself. And the purpose also is to help to smooth the downside a little bit, because they do have some long vega and some short delta. And the purpose also allows us to be more aggressive on the reverse Harvey, as I said. And finally, it lets us maybe add another put credit spread or two down below the combo that we would not otherwise, have added. And as far as the logistics of it, you want to make sure that you establish a break-even point. When I put the trade in the open tab, I try to remember, thanks to Dot, a very good suggestion from Dot, I try to remember to actually put the break-even point, in the open tab. But if I forget, you should calculate it yourself. And what that is simply the price of the debit spread minus the credit that you received from the credit spread. And when the debit spread hits that value, then theoretically you would break even if you took off the debit spread component and you allowed the credit spread to expire. That's what I call the break-even point. So you want to do that, and then you want to be ready to put on a brand new combo if you have enough time. If the first debit spread needs to be closed and there's enough time remaining, then just go ahead and do a brand new combo trade. And you would leave the original put credit spread in place, because, again, that's going to pay for the small loss of the debit spread. So that's the theory and the logistics of it.
Yeah, that was a good suggestion to add the break even. And here's the open tab. You can just, if you haven't seen it, it's like here, the break even is $800 or $410. So it's nice that these are in here for people to reference. Obviously, you're going to have to keep track of your own, because you're going to get different fill prices than Dan, but that's the idea. And Rick had a good point. He says when he gets a big move up in the market, he usually RHs the bottoms cheaply, knowing that before exiting the trade, the market will likely revert, and then he can RH the upside for more credit. And that's one thing I like to do is always look for opportunities to RH the bottom and reduce risk overall.
Yeah, me too. That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Rick. I do the same thing. I don't know that we've actually discussed that. Probably should have, but I do the same thing.
And that's just good trade management.
Well, it is, and you do want to keep up with the skew, whatever method you want to use. If you want to be really mathematical about it, you can do that. If you want to just do the 25 put minus the 25 call divided by the at the money volatility, you can do that. You can do something like the 25 put minus the at the money divided by the at the money to normalize it. Just something to keep up with what the skew is doing, as well as the overall volatility. So that's because that is going to help your decision making process. Are you getting some increasing steepness of the skew curve, and if so, why? And you should be able to figure out why it's becoming steeper or less steep. That's not a critical element of the trade. You can continue to make money and do it very well without keeping up with the skew, but it's just another piece of information that's relatively easy to maintain and keep up with.
And I see a comment from Chuck. He's saying, isn't the break even for the debit spread the price of the overall combo? In other words, if you pay $7.80, then isn't the debit spread break even $7.80? It's
yes.
Actually, well, if you pay $7.80 for the, that would be the break even for the whole spread, right?
Yeah, for the combo. Yeah,
for the combo. And then Bodan asked about as far as like other hedges we do. And generally, lately I've been bullish, for the most of the last year. So I tend to add extra put credit spreads on top of the road trip trades to bring in extra premium if the market does rally. But I tend to manage those individually. So I might sell like a 10 or 15 delta put vertical in addition to the road trip and essentially layer it on top of it if I'm bullish. If I'm not bullish, obviously I won't do that. Another thing that I do like to do is adding ES or SPY to rotate the risk graph. And Bodan actually likes that a lot. He says it's proven to be very effective and a favorite of his. So thanks for mentioning that. But if you haven't seen it, basically it just rotates the risk graph. If you're going long, it rotates it counterclockwise. If you're shorting, it goes clockwise. And then with SPY, you can just do 10 to 1 with SPX. So if you need to add 5 delta, say you need to add long 5 delta, you buy 50 spiders. Now that's not suitable for all types of accounts. Like an IRA, you can't short the spiders, but in most accounts, the PM and Reg T, you can buy and sell the spiders. And if you need 50 deltas, you can just do a futures contract if your account's approved for it. But those are nice and quick, and I also like it for neutralizing a position in a fast market going down. It hits the pause button or slow motion on your trade. It gives you time to think and get a decent fill on any options that you want to put in place to deal with the market movement. And then once those are filled, take off your spider/futures, and works great.
Yeah, I do the same thing in my PM account. Spiders, of course, are somewhat expensive, but they're very liquid, and you can dump them, easily. Just remember now, if you do spiders in a taxable account, they are subject to wash sale rules. So just be aware of that. You don't have to worry about that within an IRA, but you do in a taxable account. Whereas with the futures, since they're Section 1256, they're not subject to wash sale rules.
Yeah, the only problem is if you're trading not a huge position, plus or minus 50 delta to shop may be more than you need. So
yeah. It's like a mega dose of penicillin.
There you go.
Much more than you needed.
Rick had a funny comment. He says he tends to be a market bearish person by nature, So Adam Grimes helps keep him neutralize his zero hedge bearishness.
Yeah. Then
Okay.
also, for hedges, I mean, hedges are, I mean, that's a never-ending topic of conversation that options traders, I mean, after a couple of beers, the conversation can just go a little crazy about, hedges. I tend to be fairly simplistic. There are things you can do like, back ratios, which work, great, but of course, because you have that sea of death there, they're going to margin the heck out of you for that sea of death. One thing I like to do is when the market is up on a fairly big up day, I will buy a teeny at, say, 30, 40, 50 days, out in time. I don't buy teenies when the market is down because the price gets jacked up a bit. You can buy teenies when the market's, has rallied up for a day or two, and you sort of have an inventory of teenies that you do have to keep up with because the ones that are lower down are not as effective. Number one. Number two, they're losing their value as time passes. So before you lose the whole thing, you can roll them up. And if you want to, you can actually help to pay for the teenies by selling a narrow strike butterfly slightly out of the money. Farther, usually farther down than the road trip trade itself. But you can sell one of them, and if the market, I don't mean sell, I mean buy one. You have to buy it very cheaply for maybe 50, 60 cents. And if the market then drops off moderately, that butterfly will start making a little bit of money, which will pay for some of your teenies. So those are just a couple of ideas you can do. If you think that a rally is not going to, continue, you can actually help to offset the cost of your teenies by selling calls or call credit spreads. A lot of people do that. But of course, if the market keeps going up, you're going to be losing on both your teenies and the call credit spread. So those are just some other ideas. Deltas on teenies, Chuck, are anywhere from, say, 2 to 5 delta. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to pay too much for those teenies.
Yeah, the teenies were called teenies from back in the day when options were priced in fractions.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yep.
Well, let's see. And the hedges, too. We talked about this in Trading Group 2 not too long ago. It's like Jim Riggio said, you have to decide what you're hedging against. So how much of a loss are you willing to take? And then that will partly determine what type of hedge you put on. How much are you willing for your position to go down before your hedge kicks in and saves you? Because the less you're willing to accept in a loss, the more your hedge is going to cost you. And I heard Tom Sosnoff was asked one time, couldn't he just hedge off all the risk? And he said, sure, but then he hedges off all the profit. So you have to make some decisions on how much are you really willing to risk.
Right, exactly, and I should have mentioned that because that's going to really vary. That's basically a trader's choice. I mean, I only, personally, now this is just me, but I'm willing to lose roughly 50% if we had a true black swan, down, 20, 25%. Say in 2 days, and I can't do anything. I'm willing to lose roughly 50%. But I don't want to hedge off any more than that because the likelihood of that happening is very minimal. And as Tom said, the more you hedge, the more you pay. The more you pay, the less that you make. And so what you should do is to calculate, we'll say 20% down, and put a couple of teenies on for, say, your entire portfolio on your platform, say Option View, and go down 25%, and see what those teenies are doing for you, and you'll see right away if you need more or if you have paid too much.
Well, and that's also another reason that you want to keep some cash in your account. So, for instance, with the road trip trades, a general number for us is a 20% cash reserve for Reg T accounts. So if you're willing to lose half of your account on a once-in-a-generation type of move, then it's only, you have 20% of that 50 that you want to save is already in the bank. So you can actually accept a little bit more risk than if you have everything in all your trades all the time. So it does give you a little bit of buffer to keep that cash in your account.
Right.
You're not going to get completely wiped out ever. So that's good. So
did we ever answer the question of the gentleman that called and we couldn't understand him?
Yeah, that was
Lewis.
He
was breaking up?
Yeah, he typed it in.
Oh, okay. Okay, Lewis. Yeah, thank you, Lewis.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. You were breaking up, but I just couldn't quite get it. But thanks.
Let's see. Jam asked one more question. Have we noticed that on toss, span margin almost triples the max loss if price gets beyond the short?
Oh, yeah. But I don't know if it gets beyond the short.
For me, the quick and easy way is just take the market down about 10 to 12% on your T+0, and that's roughly what the span margins should be at most brokers.
Yeah, I don't really worry about that too much. I mean, if you have a road trip, a trade on, you can't lose more than the maximum margin on the far side of your graph. The far left side. I mean, you're capped off, right?
Right. And that would make sense if you start out at a span margin of say about 30% of what the Reg T margin would be, and the market makes a big move down, then it would roughly triple if you're going to get your span margin, down to where the Reg T would be. Limit down in SPX is a 5% move.
And we recently had one, as you probably know, Ken.
Yeah, the election. That might be dot. So, and in fact, I was thinking about this after I saw that limit down and the market started going back up. Why wouldn't you buy if it's limit down? Because it's not going to go down anymore today.
Right. Yeah, that was exciting, though.
It was exciting. Maybe not in a good way, but it was exciting.
Not in a good way.
Yep.
I've been through, I don't know, maybe 3 of those things, and they're never fun.
No. All right. So I think we're a little over an hour, and questions have kind of wound down. So thanks, everyone. We really appreciate spending time with us and all the questions that you had. It really helps us learn and get to know you too. So thanks for participating.
Very good PowerPoint, Tom. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for taking the time. You are so busy. I don't know how you do all this unless I guess it's magic. I have no other explanation. Or lack of sleep. Yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, yeah, but you did a great job on the PowerPoint, and maybe. Hopefully now, if we have more questions on the reverse Harvey quote rules, which they're not really rules, we can simply refer them to this session.
Well, and I can even maybe put it in a forum post too, so everybody benefits from it.
Yeah, because and I mean, we understand, everybody, that there are a lot of rules-based traders out there. That's kind of a tongue twister, rules-based traders. And I understand that, but by the same token, we don't want to give a bunch of hard and fast rules that only apply in certain situations. We want our subscribers to be able to think their way through this and to understand why Tom and I make the decisions that we do, and therefore, Stephen Channon, good friend of mine, an excellent trader, he hated the word rules. He would never use the word rules. It was always guidelines. So I sort of follow Stephen on this. These are guidelines for the reverse Harvey.
Well, my mom had a professor in college who said rules were made to be broken. So.
Well, yeah, that's also true. Yeah, well, I had a teenage daughter that did the same thing.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, but now she's a mom, and so now she knows.
Yep. Now it's all on her to go through the same challenges raising teenagers.
Right, exactly.
All right, everyone. Have a great weekend. Don't forget the market is closed on Monday for Martin Luther King, so enjoy the long weekend, and we will see you next week for the road trip. So thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.